It's in that book, probably.
All right, let's open in prayer, everybody. We'll get started. Father, thank you for giving us thank you, Lord, for all the many blessings. I pray that God, you open our hearts today to the Word of God. Lord, helps us draw closer to you through this, Father, and helps to leave here, Lord, better equipped for the battle which you called us to. We ask all this in Jesus' name. Amen. Ms. Barb, going to our verse last Sunday as we started doing. Are you ready for that?
Yes.
Okay. She's like, sure I am. We started doing that at the beginning of the year. We started doing our, just the one time, the verse of this past Sunday. Well, so we'll get in, I'll give you an update on our pew situation, and then we will we'll get in there. Open your Bibles to Genesis 41. Genesis 41.
Psalm 16:11.
Oh, sorry, Psalm 16:11 is your verse. So I told you to turn to the wrong place at the wrong time. Well, right place at the wrong time. Okay.
And it's to the tune of In the Garden.
Okay. Psalm 16:11.
Psalm 16:11.
Okay.
Thou show me the path of life. In thy presence is fullness of joy. At thy right hand are pleasures forevermore. Psalm 16:11.
That's right. That's what we know that another favorite guy, Andy. Andy walks in and talks to me, right? So, come on, we can laugh and have fun in church.
No.
Do what?
I said no.
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 So on Sunday I mentioned about us getting some new pews. We put an offer into a church for some pews, a reasonable offer. They had a bunch. They were so anxious to get rid of them, but they had to meet with their board. So they met with their board. They called me, sent me a message Tuesday. Sent me a message Tuesday. They said now they want $75 a piece for the big pews and $50 a piece for the small ones, which would be about $1,000. So I told them that we're going to politely decline on that. Because I explained to them when we went up there, they have a whole church view. I said, here's the things y'all are going to be facing. Number one, nobody wants a whole church full of pews anymore. And all the churches are getting rid of pews to get chairs. They've got a whole warehouse full of chairs. And I said, and nobody's going to take the quantity that you want all at one time. So it's funny. So after they said I declined it, and about an hour later, I get a text from the lady saying, hey, the bishop wants me to keep your number on hand just in case. I'm like, yeah, okay. So you know what's going to happen after a couple of weeks and nobody bites on there. Now they want $5,000 for everything. After nobody bites on that, our offer is going to start looking pretty good to them, right? With what we have. So in the meantime, I am looking out for some other sources. There are some other pews out there, and there's even a really nice set in Ohio. But there's a missionary that there's a missionary that transports that stuff as part of his ministry that he does. So I'm working with a couple different organizations. There's a bunch of pews that are free. The problem is we got to find the ones that are the right size. See, ours are 13 and they're just barely in there. So even if we went with anywhere between 10 and 13, we'd still fit just about pretty close the same amount of people, but give us a little bit more walkway. We can't really go any bigger because our side walls are already tight walking down them anyway, let alone trying to close up the middle. So as of right now, we're on hold. My guess is next week, if we don't have anything by next week or week after, that church up there will call me back. And then I should tell them, well, our offer's only half now. I'm not going to do that. But here's the thing, though. I don't necessarily agree with the method in which they did that. To me, they're after the money on it. I get it. They're older pews. But, they're old. They've had them for a long time. But here's the thing. You're never going to get out of them what you pay for them.
Right.
Used. It's just not going to happen. So we're going to see how the Lord does. The Lord's got a good set out there for us somewhere. So that's where we're at. As of right now, we're holding off. As soon as I find the set, we'll move forward. So, open your outlines, Genesis 41. If you notice on your outline, we start at verse 37. Last 2 weeks ago, we had Bible study. We ended at verse 36. And who remembers where we were at with the story of Joseph and Pharaoh? Barb.
That Joseph had collected all the food for people, and now they were starting to get hungry, and they had to go to him to get food.
No.
That he was
Dream.
Michelle.
that he was in charge of pretty much everything, but Pharaoh was the final say-so.
Yeah,
Oh, okay, so we.
yeah.
We
So
haven't got to that
So
yet.
what happens? Pharaoh had the dream. Remember about the harvest and the wheat and all that. The 7 years of plenty, 7 years of bad. And so Joseph's interpreting the dream. Remember, Joseph had been in the dungeon. He'd been in the prison, and the baker all of a sudden, or the butler all of a sudden remembered Joseph. Oh yeah, hey Pharaoh, I know a man that can do that. 2 years ago, I forgot about it, but he's down there now. And so he brings him up. Joseph tells Pharaoh, hey, you need to find somebody to manage your harvest now. And because in 7 years you're going to have plenty, but after that it's going to be drought. So Pharaoh's like, well, look, man, I don't have any man to answer. You're the man now. So Joseph went from the dungeon to the throne, right? He's second in charge. Pharaoh tells him, there's nobody else higher in the land other than you but me. The only place that I will rule more than you is on the throne. So your word is my word. And he gave him the reign, remember? Put Joseph in charge of everything. Shows you how God gets the victory through a lot of heartache, right? Because Joseph actually was treated badly along the way by his brothers, by Potiphar's wife, but everything Joseph touched, what happened with it? It prospered, right? God blessed it. And when you're prospering, then the people want to keep you in those places because you only benefit them as you go through. So that's what we pick up here, verse 37. And the thing was good in the eyes of Pharaoh and in the eyes of all his servants. And Pharaoh said unto his servant, can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? We ended in verse 40 last time, but I backed up just a little bit here. Number one in your worksheet, Pharaoh did not like the plan that Joseph told him. True or false? True. That would be false, right? Because Pharaoh did not like the plan. So Pharaoh did like his plan.
Yeah.
So number 38, Pharaoh believed that Joseph had the blank of God in him. The Spirit writes, can we find such a man, verse 38, can we find such a one as this is, a man in whom the Spirit of God is? So be the Spirit.
That's a witness right there.
Yeah.
Because Pharaoh, they believed he was God.
Yeah.
Yet Pharaoh acknowledged, no, the Spirit of the true God is in him.
Well, it also shows too that when God moved on somebody, people knew it because look at King Nebuchadnezzar with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, right? He knew that their God was the God of the Bible. King Darius with Daniel, right?
Yeah.
He knew that Daniel's God was God. And Pharaoh here, all these God haters or God rejectors know who the God of the Bible is. So it makes you wonder, why don't you believe in him? And if you see what he does, you know what he's capable of, why don't you just believe in God?
Right.
It's such a simple concept, they don't get it. Verse 39.
They had no ears.
Yeah, they had no ears.
Ears to hear. They had no ears to hear.
Yep, very true. Verse 38, and Pharaoh said unto his servant, can we find such a one as this is, a man whom the Spirit of God is? And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, for as much as God hath showed thee all this, there is none so discreet and wise as thou art. Now, notice who Pharaoh gave the credit to for interpreting the dream. Who did he give to in that verse? For as much as God hath showed thee all this. You can tell the difference between a false prophet and a true prophet, because a false prophet will say, look what I did for you. A true prophet will say, look what God did for you. So that's a big difference in there, right? Bible says, by their fruits you shall know them. And so we see that taking place here. Verse 40, thou shalt be, think about this promotion for Joseph. He didn't just go up the ranks. He went from like the lowest to the second highest. And that was a big jump there. Thou shalt be over my house, and according unto thy word shall all my people be ruled. Only in my throne will I be greater than thou. That means Joseph was now the man. He was the one that was in charge. And Joseph didn't go after that on his own. God gave him that. But what did Joseph do along the way? He remained faithful to God. Right? Because he was in Potiphar's house, Potiphar put him in charge of everything he had, right? When he was in the prison, what did the head jailer do? Put Joseph in charge of everything he had. So Joseph remained faithful in those roles, and then God moved him as he needed him to be moved. Number 3 on your worksheet, verse 39 through 40. Joseph was appointed ruler over everything of the land of Pharaoh's house, just not the throne. True or false?
True.
That would be true. All right. Verse 41. And here's where we start afresh in our verses. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. Now, Egypt was not a small little town like King's Ferry. Okay? Egypt was It was a huge land, right? And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen and put a gold chain about his neck. So he decked out Joseph in a manner of royalty, right? Almost like his coat of many colors was kind of showing, a symbol of preference, and now he had all the Pharaoh's garments and stuff. Yes, sir.
I think this is the first case of white privilege.
Well, praise the Lord.
Well, it's true. Egypt's the land of Ham.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Verse 41. Actually, I think we just did that. So number 4 in your worksheet, Joseph was promoted and Pharaoh took Jacob's ring and wore it. Huh?
No, Pharaoh's ring.
There you go. See if anybody got it. See, Joseph was promoted, and it was Jacob took Pharaoh's ring, not Pharaoh took Jacob's ring. Somebody was trying to do a little slip with us here.
Imagine.
Now, see, I don't remember this. I wrote this for last week's Bible study, but then we had the weather come in, so I got to remember what it was. Praise the Lord. Verse 33. And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried before him, bow the knee, and he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. So when it says they cried before him, who cried before him?
The people.
It'd be the people, right? Or even the guards walking around with the chariots going out. So you got Pharaoh in a chariot, you got Joseph in a chariot next to him to walk around, all the people walking with that, like the president goes out, he's got the brigade with him with the guards, you got people walking beside, telling him, hey, bow your knee, bow your knee, bow your knee. Royalty's coming through. Pharaoh and Joseph. So Pharaoh took Joseph and basically went around to the parts of the land, letting people know that Joseph was now the one who was in charge. So, number 5 in your worksheet, Joseph rode in second seat as Pharaoh made him ruler over the land of Canaan. True or false?
Second chariot.
That's the land.
Yeah, Joseph rode in second seat as Pharaoh made him ruler. Well, it was also not the land of Canaan, it was land of Egypt.
Land of Egypt.
Land of Egypt, see? Man, we're slick this time. All right, verse 44. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, and without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt. Now, what's Pharaoh saying here? He said, I'm Pharaoh, but no man's going to do anything without you, right? And without thee. So in other words, Joseph had control over all the work, all the finances, everything of the land of Egypt. He was over everything. So Pharaoh's going to sit back and basically let Joseph run. It's almost like some companies, you have the president, the CEO, the same person. Some companies have a separate president, separate CEO. It's almost kind of like that. But one's the head honcho, the other one's kind of the next guy in line that runs it. So the only know that because I watch Shark Tank a lot. So if anybody ever watch Shark Tank, it's kind of a cool show. Number 6, no man shall lift up his blank or blank without Joseph. Hand or foot, right? Hand or foot. All right, verse 45. And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah. Zaphnath-Paneah. So we're going to go with Joseph. All right, and you just have to allow me to butcher this name here, okay? Huh? Do what?
Zaph.
Zaph. There you go. Yeah, Zaph. We'll nickname him Zaph. That's what we'll do. There we go. And notice, so Pharaoh called Joseph, Joseph's name Zaphnath-Paneah, and he gave him to wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar's priest of On, and Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt. So, in one day, Joseph got promoted and got married, right? So, actually, we don't know how long it took for him to get the wife, but we know it was relatively close there. Number 7 on your worksheet, Joseph was given a wife and went out over some of the land. True or false? Why that false? He went out over all the land of Egypt. Now, I'm sure it took him more than a day to cover the whole land of Egypt. I'm sure it took him a while to get through. Good, forgive me, my throat's been running dry this past couple days. I'm starting to get the signs of this head cold going around. I'm fighting it very heavily with Diet Coke, cheeseburgers, and NyQuil. So it's working well for me, all right? I just got to get it fought down. What? Sherry's over there. Huh? No, yeah, pizza works good, but it's not as good as cheeseburgers.
Trying to drown it out.
I'm trying to.
Trying to drown it out.
There you go, trying to drown it out. Verse number 46. And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. So you know what this is saying? Joseph was just a kid. Joseph was 30 years old and got promoted that. He's probably the youngest second in command ruler ever known. You know? But it shows he had the wisdom and the power of God on him. I mean, you know, how great is that?
That's when Jesus' ministry started when he was 30.
Jesus' ministry started when he was 30 years old, right? His earthly ministry did. Yep, lasted for 3 years. So, all right, number 8 on your worksheet. Joseph was blank years old when he was made ruler of Egypt. You have 22, 23, 45, or 30? 30 years, right? Verse 47. And in 7 plenteous years, the earth brought forth by handfuls. And he gathered up all the food of 7 years, which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food in the cities, the food of the field, which was round about every city, laid he up in the same. So what's these 2 verses saying here? It's talking, we're in the 7 years of plenty. In other words, there's so much food coming in, so much food growing, nobody's wanting anything. But Joseph's taking it, he's storing it. Looking back, we probably should have done that with our age years a few months back, right? When we had plenty of it. Yes, sir.
Well, the question I have is, obviously that dream and that interpretation wasn't secret because the people saw Joseph gathering all this stuff.
Right.
And so my question is, why didn't the people build their own little granaries and put away stuff like our forefathers would have their pantries and stuff? So when the 17 years came, they didn't have to sell their property and everything just to get food.
Well, it doesn't say they didn't do that. I mean, you know, each one of them might have a little bit of storage in their own
Well, it
place.
says
They
that he,
depended on the government.
Well, yeah. So, I mean, they might have had a pantry full, but if their pantries were the size of ours, it wouldn't last long,
it
right?
ain't gonna last 7 years.
He said that everybody knew about the dream because I thought just his brothers knew about it. They were so envious they want to kill him over it because
He's not talking about that dream.
No,
He's talking about the dream that Pharaoh had.
Right.
Pharaoh.
Yeah, the one that Pharaoh had. So saying people throughout the land of Egypt probably heard about the dream. Well, to your point, Steve, probably word of mouth, right? Because
Yeah.
Pharaoh told the dream in front of his people, his wise men, rulers, all that. None saying, you know, they talk.
oh yeah.
So, but the dream you're talking about, Chuck, is the one with his brothers, and that's going to come up here a little bit too. Yes, ma'am.
The people must have noticed that he was gathering up all the food for
Absolutely.
7 years.
Yeah.
It's like, you know,
Yep. And they might have been told, hey, we're gathering this up, so when the 7 years of drought come, we all got plenty of food. We all have food to survive on.
It might have been part of their taxation system that they had to give up part of their food too. You never know.
Good point, yes, sir.
But too, it might have been the people thought, wow, these good times are gonna last forever.
You know, to your point, when we are in good times, even if we know they're going to end, we get like right in the middle of them, we forget about that ending coming, don't we? Sometimes we just we focus on that plenty so much, and all of a sudden the drought comes. Like, uh-oh. Yes.
Yeah, another thing, they didn't believe in climate change.
No. Nothing was going green at that point, right? Amen. All right. Verse 48. Sorry, I did that. Number 9 in your worksheet. The land produced the plenty as promised. True or false? Some of the cities around Egypt gathered up the plenty as well. False. Why is that one false?
they just never, it doesn't say they gathered themselves for the cities. It was always Joseph that gathered things.
So, well, you're right. I mean, it would be false, it's correct, but I think it was more that he gathered up all the food of 7 years, which was in round about every city, laid up in the same. And now there it says gathered up or at some of the cities. So, you know, the question was, so the correct answer is false, which is right. Verse 49, and Joseph gathered corn as the sand of the sea, very much until he left numbering, for it was without number. So what your mind when you gathered up corn as the sand of the sea.
There's so much.
You can't count it, right? Anybody ever go out to like a beach and pop that pile of sand in your hand and all the little grains fall out? You can't count them, right? There's innumerable. We learned about the sand earlier in the book of Genesis about the seed of Abraham, right? It'll be as the sand. You can't count it. It's just going to be, it's impossible to count. So Joseph was able to store up all this corn. Yes,
So
sir?
look at every year of corn. I mean, you're pieces of corn out every year.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I don't know if anybody counts the little kernels, right? When they go to boil it or even cook it. Praise the Lord. Verse 40, or number 10 in your worksheet. Joseph gathered up so much of the corn that he could number it. True or false?
False.
False, right. All right. Verse 50. And unto Joseph were born 2 sons before the years of famine came, which Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar's priest of Ono, bare unto him. So we all know that one, number 11. Joseph had how many sons? 2 sons. All right. Verse 51. And Joseph called the name of his firstborn Manasseh, for God said, or for God said he, hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. What does that mean, made me forget all of his toil? Yes.
He was able to put behind him all the things that happened to him in the process of going to jail, being accused of wrongly and stuff like that.
Now let's define that for just a moment. What we mean by able to put past, like forgive it or forget it?
Well, I think forgive it, maybe not completely forget it, but
Yeah.
definitely it was not forefront of his mind.
Right, because we're going to see in just a few verses that Joseph didn't forget about it when he sees his brothers, but he did forgive them. And when Joseph doesn't forget about it, he doesn't do it revengefully. He does it in kind of a, I'm going to mess with them just a little bit kind of way, you know? Yes, sir.
I think at that point, he saw God's hand in everything he went through.
Yeah.
Because he saw the dream fulfilled. And so then he had a firstborn and he forgot about all the toil because he knew he was in God's will that whole time.
You know, I actually mentioned on my podcast series on what the Bible says about women, how when a woman, she goes through all that pain and the anguish of childbirth, the moment she holds that baby in her hand, she forgets all about that, you know, because she's got the reward, the prize in her hand. And so Joseph, I think at this point, he got, you know, he's been at peace with this. He forgot all about it. But not forgot about it, but he forgave his brothers. He has no animosity towards them. He's not upset with them in any way. Because to Steve's point, I think he saw God working. Because, you know, folks, every time we go through the hard times, we get to that victory at the end. We get to that victory, we realize sometimes, man, I'm kind of glad I went through that, because if I didn't go through that, I wouldn't be where I am today. You know? Somebody asked me a couple of years ago if I could redo my life again, would I make any changes? You know, I thought about that for a little bit. I thought at first, you know, especially when I was living in my sin and stuff, that I probably wouldn't have done that. But you know, I don't know if I'd be where I am today if I hadn't. I'm not condoning or telling anybody to walk in sin. I'm just saying everything that's gone on in my life has made me who I am today, and it led me to my repentance and my walk with God. You know, so you know, I think Joseph was at that point. He just, you know what, guys, it's happened, it's done, it's over. I'm better off. God used what happened for good, right? And Joseph knew that. So, verse 51, I just said number 12 in your worksheet. Ephraim means that God had made Joseph forget all his trouble at his father's house.
Toil in the land of my affliction.
51, toil in all my father's house, right? Verse 51, Joseph called the name of the firstborn Manasseh, for God, said he, hath made me forget all my toil and all my father's house. So the answer, I put, so Ephraim means that.
No,
So
Manasseh.
it'd be Manasseh means that, right? So that would be false. Number 12. Verse 52. And the name of the second called he Ephraim, for God hath caused me to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. Number 13 in your worksheet, Manasseh means to be fruitful in the land of my affliction. That would be, why is that false? Because it's Ephraim, right? So switch the two names around. Yep. Amen. So we got that. Verse 53. And the 7 years of plenteous that was in the land of Egypt were ended. Well, that kind of says that in verse number 14. your worksheet, the 7 years of plenteous had ended. That was just a comment. Verse 54. And the 7 years of dearth began to come, according to as Joseph had said, and the dearth was in all lands, but in all the land of Egypt there was bread. So everything except Egypt was in a drought. It was in a time of famine. They couldn't grow things, couldn't provide for families. I'm sure the water wells were drying up, all that kind of stuff. But Egypt had the plenteous. Where was Joseph? In Egypt. So God bless what Joseph did. Yes, sir.
I think one of the reasons why they were able to grow food there, or have food, was the Nile Delta too, was real huge. And so that lasted a while too, before that dried up.
Yeah.
But I think, isn't the Nile River like a mile wide or something?
Well, the thing is, the delta is real fertile soil. It's because it deposits all the silt.
Yeah.
So they would have been able to grow longer there than anybody else
Gotcha.
because of better soil,
Yeah.
more moisture in the soil.
Amen.
That's
Amen.
why it is in New Orleans too.
Yeah. Well, you can always tell someone who's lying to you, say the Nile ain't just a river in Egypt. You know,
Yeah.
come on. Come ground tonight, man. Praise the Lord. Verse 15. The dearth had hit all the land except Canaan. True or false? False. Why is that false? Because it's Egypt, not Canaan, right? Verse 55. And when all the land of Egypt was famished, the people cried to Pharaoh for bread. See, so there wasn't, so there's still, even Egypt was plenteous for a while, but it says when all the land of Egypt was famished, in other words, when the people consumed the stuff that was in the land of Egypt, then they cried unto Pharaoh for bread. And Pharaoh said unto all Egyptians, go unto Joseph, what he saith to you, do. In other words, they're calling their government. The government says, hey, here's the man. Go to him. Do what he tells you to do. All right? Now, you notice he wasn't standing out there with a needle or a microchip. Joseph wasn't. He was willing to give them what they needed to give.
Yeah.
But see, Joseph had God's interest in mind, whereas men today have their own interest in mind. And we see that falls apart very easily. Number 16, verse 55, Pharaoh told his people to go to Joseph, and what he saith to you, do. True or false? That one would be true. That's correct. All right. Verse 56. And the famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened up all the storehouse and sold unto the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. So we see the famine was over the face of the earth. In other words, it wasn't anywhere on earth that the famine did not cover. It hit everything on there, right? People, huh?
Oh, it was over the face of the earth.
Yeah, what did I say?
No, that's right.
Oh, yeah.
True.
Yeah, face of the earth, yeah. So over the face of the earth, and it means all the land there, all the areas of the land of the earth was dry, and it was famine, it couldn't grow. And even Egypt was famished. It says here, the famine was over all the face of the earth, and Joseph opened up the storehouse and sold to the Egyptians, and the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. That means the famine got worse actually in the land of Egypt. So the storehouses now had to be opened, and Joseph now was selling the food so they could make bread and stuff like that. So number 17 in your worksheet, verse 56, the famine was over the water, birds, animals, or face of the earth. Face of the earth, right? Verse 37, and all countries came into Egypt to Joseph for to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all lands. Now notice, Joseph didn't actually have a government set up, people working for him. He might have had them opening the gates, but people had to go to Joseph to get permission to buy the food. They had to go to him to sell it to him. Now, everybody came to Joseph. That's a lot of people Joseph had to deal with on a daily basis.
Yeah.
And because probably people didn't always have the money, so they might have traded animals, might have traded different things, bartered, whatever it was. I mean, they didn't have the Federal Reserve currency that we have today, and technically, people, our money's not our money, it's all got the government's name on it, so at some point it's theirs, right? Praise the Lord. All right, pass on. Chapter 42, verses 1 through 2. Now, when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, why do ye look one upon another? What's he saying here? What's Jacob telling his sons here?
Yeah, and they're looking at each other like, what do we do?
Yeah, standing around, hey, there's nothing to grow, we can't go out and harvest, what are we gonna do? Jacob's like, look guys, there's food in Egypt, we're gonna go over there and buy the food, alright? Now, who is Jacob again?
Jacob was Joseph's
Joseph's
father.
Joseph's father, right, and then got changed to Israel, blessed by God, all the way through where the nation of Israel started from. Alright, verse 2. And he said, behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. Now, Jacob here is older at this time because he's sending his sons down. He's like, go down now and buy the food from Egypt so we don't die. Because the famine was waxing sore everywhere, right? It was getting worse. Yes, sir.
That just shows you, if you believe this account, and biblically, I mean, historically it's true, that there are great periods of when the Earth's climate does change, and man has nothing to do with it.
Mm-hmm.
And they're trying to get us to swallow the bait of man-made climate change.
Yeah.
It's got nothing to do with it.
I can tell you right now, climate's changed now since it was back in July. You know, I mean, if you go outside and look, it's a whole lot different now. Praise the Lord. Number 1 on your worksheet for chapter 42, Joseph said to his sons, why do you look one upon another? There is corn in Egypt. Go and buy for us. True or false? Oh, Jacob said that. That's right.
Jacob, not Joseph.
Man, I feel like I actually almost circled true on that. We also said false. I'm like, wait a minute, why? But it's right. Jacob said that. I almost got myself hung up on it. You know it's pretty bad if you write out a test and you fail it. Right? I mean, come
Hope for us all.
on. Do what?
90% of them are trick questions.
Do what?
90% of them are trick
Yeah.
questions.
Yep. Verse number 3. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. But Benjamin, Joseph's brother, Jacob, sent not with his brethren, for he said, lest peradventure mischief befall him. Because, Jacob's now concerned about mischief falling on the younger one because he as far as Jacob knows, Joseph's dead. Remember, the last that Jacob heard was that Joseph was eaten by an animal because they saw his coat of many colors. That was all torn up and bloodstained all over him. So the 10 brothers go. Benjamin, the youngest one, stays back. He doesn't go. He's not back because Joseph's afraid that something might happen to him. So if the other 10 die, at least he still has one son left. So basically sacrificing, he's willing to sacrifice the other 10, but he wants to hold on to
Well,
the
because
one.
the last time they all went out and he sent Joseph out there, Joseph never came back.
Yeah, exactly.
Why would he do it a second time?
Absolutely. So what, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me, right?
They at least learned that lesson not to repeat it.
So we see in number 2 on your worksheet, all of Jacob's sons went to buy corn. That's supposed to be corn, except Joseph's brother Benjamin. True or false?
True.
True. Why was Benjamin identified as Joseph's brother and not their brothers?
Because he was.
He was born to Rebecca rather than Leah.
Rachel.
Rachel.
Yeah. See, remember the wife that Joseph loved, that Jacob loved, was Rachel. Right? He got Leah and he got the handmaid, but he loved Rachel. Rachel was one that couldn't have the children for so long. Then she had the children, she bore 2, and she died in childbirth with Benjamin, right? As we saw in there. So that's why they identified as Joseph's brother, and not the other boys' brother, right? It was just a neat little wording that identifies who the mothers are with that one. Verse 5. And the sons of Israel, Israel being Jacob, and the sons of Israel came to buy corn among those that came, for the famine was in the land of Canaan. All right. Now we know it was all over the face of the earth, right? So they're going from Canaan into Egypt. And Joseph was the governor over the land, and he it was that sold to all people of the land. And Joseph's brethren came and bowed down themselves before him with their face to the earth. Now, before we go any further, what was the dream that Joseph told his brothers that they hated him for? Barb.
The sheaves would bow down to him. They would bow down to Joseph's sheaf of corn.
Yeah. And he also said, he had another dream where the mom and dad would bow down to him as well, right?
Yeah.
So this is a fulfillment of that first dream where the brothers would bow down to Joseph. That's what they're doing right here. Verse number 7. And Joseph saw his brother, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, From the land of Canaan to buy food. Now, Joseph recognized them, but they didn't recognize him. First of all, they probably never expected him to be alive. And if he was alive, they never would have ever thought that he would have been in a place ruler like that. He was probably all decked out after many years had gone by. It would probably be hard to recognize Joseph. You know, I mean, he would look so different. Yes,
Should
sir.
have paid attention to the dream.
Yeah, should pay attention to the dream, right? But you know, when we do things we shouldn't, and we're just wandering around, sometimes we forget that those things we should remember at times. Yes, sir.
I think the Egyptians had a certain appearance to it that was different than the Jews or the Israelites.
Yeah.
They didn't. I think they were clean shaven.
Yeah, they didn't have any
curl beards.
Gotcha.
So
Yeah.
Joseph probably did look strange.
He looked a lot different than them, right? And we see here that Joseph knew them, and so you know Joseph. We see in a couple of verses back that he forgot. He basically let go of everything that happened to his past, his father's house. But now he's speaking roughly to his brothers. I think he's doing this as kind of to taunt them a little bit, maybe scare them a little bit, whatever, or you know, in a way to try to reintroduce himself to them. He might just be having a little bit of fun with them. We don't know, you know.
Yeah.
He's talking rough with them, but we'll see for a reason. Yes,
He
ma'am.
might have allowed himself to do a little bit of getting even.
He might have, right?
Yeah.
He might have been in that battle, you know, as he's getting right there, the Lord's like, hey, remember, you let it go. You let it go.
Yeah, right.
And, you know, Joseph might have been, all right, you know, we'll back off here a little bit. Number 3, verse 5 through 7. Joseph had not recognized his brothers. True or false?
False.
False, that's right. Verse number 8. 132, verse 8. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew him not. So they had no idea who he was. Now, dealing with a ruler, you might not all look at him face to face either. You know, you might be kind of glancing up, glancing down a little bit, somebody royalty. So you're not going to sit there and stare at him. Hey, you know what? You got dad's nose, you got mom's eyes. You know, I'm sure they weren't doing anything like that. So number 4 on your worksheet, just Joseph's brothers did not know him. It was just a comment there. Verse 9. And Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, Ye are spies, to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. So Joseph talks rough to them, then he accuses them of being spies, knowing that they're not. Maybe he's trying to put the fear of God in them or whatever. So can you imagine these boys, they go in to buy the corn, so everybody's got corn, and within minutes you're accused of being a spy, right, to come in and see the land. Now, the Bible says that all the face of the earth was famine, so there's really nothing to spy out, right? Yeah, Egypt's got the corn, we know it. We got to buy it somehow. But it says, verse 9 again, Joseph remembered the dreams which he dreamed of them, and said unto them, Ye are spies, to see the nakedness of the land ye are come, maybe to scope out, see how bad Egypt was. And they said unto him, Nay, my lord, but to buy food are thy servants come. So the boys were very humble when they stood before him, because they wanted something from him, but they were very humble with him. Number 5 on your worksheet, 9 through 10, Joseph accuses his brothers of being spies, right? All right.
It's funny how they said no. Nay, my
Yeah,
Lord, my
yeah.
Lord.
Yeah, yeah. Now, when they say Lord, understand it's a small L, but they recognize him as a ruler, as a leader. Yes.
I think he did it to put him on the defensive so that they would be trying to figure out a good answer to give him.
Maybe, or if he caught them, you know, because we know Joseph's building up to something, which will remind them of what they did to Joseph, you know.
Remember that dream, boys?
Huh?
Remember that dream, boys?
Yep. I remember that dream, boys. You know, I mean, if we were Joseph, we might kind of smirk a little bit. I remember that dream from years ago, you know. So, hey, there are the sheaves, you know, bowing down. But we know Joseph was not a proud man, so thank God for that, right? Verse number 11. We are all one man's sons. We are true men. Thy servants are no spies. Then he said unto them, Nay, but to see the nakedness of the land ye are come. So they're saying, no, we're the sons of one man. Joseph's like, no, you're spies. Now, I'm sure Joseph has the guards around him. The guards are probably getting ready to arrest these men or whatever it is. 'Cause, you get out your guard like that. So number 6, your worksheet, 11 through 12. Joseph is still accusing his brothers of being spies. And I said, I bet he's having a little fun right now. Because he's got. Yes, sir.
Maybe he's gonna test if they're genuine, because lying seems to be a familiar spirit in that family.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. We may never know the exact reason why he did that, but he did. Verse 13. And they said, Thy servants are 12 brothers, the sons of one man in the land of Canaan. And behold, the youngest is this day with our father, and one is not. So there's 12 sons, 10 went in, one's with the father. So what do they mean the one is not?
They thought Joseph was dead.
Yeah, they all thought Joseph was dead, right? In other words, we had 12, one's no longer with us. The younger ones are dead, and so us 10 are coming here. So that identifies where all 12 are. All right? And Joseph probably knows that he's the one that's not at this point. Verse 14. And Joseph said to them, That is it that I spake unto you, saying, Ye are spies. Man, Joseph's really pushing this spy agenda with them. He's like, I'm telling you, you're spies. Number 7. The brothers are trying to tell Joseph the truth, but Joseph accuses them of being spies. Verse 15. Hereby ye shall be proved by the life of Pharaoh, ye shall not go forth hence, except your youngest brother come hither. So Joseph basically said, listen, we're going to hold you. You're going to prove yourselves that, because he's like, I want to see your younger brother. Verse 16. Send one of you and let him fetch your brother. He shall be kept in prison, that your words may be proved, whether there be any truth in you, or else by the life of Pharaoh, surely ye are spies. Now, I'm not 100% sure, I don't remember, and I forgot to go back and look. Was Benjamin born before Joseph was put in the pit? I think he was born after Joseph was put in the pit, right? So Joseph may not know about Benjamin, may not know about him before he went into prison on that. I think it was after Joseph died, or after Joseph got put in the pit and sold, that Benjamin was born.
Well, just by the way his words you're coming up to,
Yeah.
it just leads me to think that he doesn't know about Benjamin.
Yeah.
Benjamin was alive. He was born in chapter 35.
So he was
His mother
alive.
died, and then Joseph was put in the pit or died, or was told to be dead at 37.
Okay, so I forgot to go back and check, because that just hit me on that. So Joseph may have known about him. He hadn't seen him, hadn't seen him in a while. Maybe just a baby at the time. I don't know.
Joseph was 17 back in chapter.
Yeah, 17 when he was.
His brothers threw him in the pit.
Yeah. So
And I wonder if
35 or something like that.
He's 30.
and I wonder if, like, Joseph's in the pit. I imagine he's begging his brothers for his life,
oh yeah.
and they left him there. So this is kind of Joseph's way
Yep.
to see, to make them beg for their lives.
Yeah. Good point. Excellent point on that. Yeah. Excellent point on that.
That which is past is required.
Yeah.
Yes.
Amen. Amen. So verse 17, and he put them all together into ward 3 days. He put them all in jail for 3 days. And Joseph said unto them the third day, This do and live, for I fear God. So what's he saying there? This do and live, for I fear God.
He'll take care of them if they are honest with him. Probably.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he tells him, go ahead and go get your brother. This I'll do. Well, in other words, if you'll get your brother, you'll prove yourself, right? So we see here, verse 19. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison. Go ye carry corn for the famine of your house. But bring your youngest brother unto me, so shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. Basically, when he's saying, this do and live, for I fear God. So Joseph is basically saying, I swear to God that this is what I'm going to do. If you go get your brother, I'm going to hold to my word, is what he's saying. He's using God as his witness on that. So he's telling, look, we're going to hold one of your brothers, the rest of you go back, take the corn back, but bring your youngest brother back, is what he's telling you here. Right? All the way through verse 20. Verse 20, bring your youngest brother unto me, so shall your words be verified, he shall not die. And they did so. Number 8 in your worksheet, Joseph lets all of the go, supposed to be them, lets all of them go to get their brother and bring them back. True or false? Well, he lets all but one go, right? Verse 21. And they said one to another, we are verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul, and when he besought us, we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon him. So this is what all this is about. The brothers now remember what they did to Joseph.
Right.
This is what it's talking about. And they said one to another, we're guilty concerning our brother. In other words, their sin was finally revealed to them, face to face. They saw the devastation of what they did, because it says here, to Lori's point, that where Joseph was begging for his life, right? We are very guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul when he besought us, when he begged for his life, right? And we would not hear. Therefore is this distress come upon us. So be sure, Numbers 32:23, the end of it says, and be sure your sins will find you out.
Yeah.
Each time, every time, they will find you out. Sometimes it may take years for it to fester, but it will be found out. Verse 23, and they knew not that Joseph understood them, for he spake unto them by an interpreter. Which means Joseph pretended he didn't hear them, and he had the interpreter translate to them, but Joseph could hear what they were saying. Right? Verse 24, and he turned himself about from them and wept, and returned them again and communed and returned to them again and communed with them, and took from them Simeon and bound him before their eyes. Now, why do you think Joseph turned from them and wept?
Because he understood what they were talking about. He saw repentance in their heart.
Repentance in their heart, yep. They realized what they had done. See, that's the difference to not walking with God and walking with God, is seeing the sin that you've been involved in, understanding the devastation it caused, and understanding that you got to turn from that sin and turn to God. I face that in my life, and I hope nobody has to go through that. But if you're living in sin, or somebody's living in sin, and they get to that point, they realize that, and God hits them upside the head with it. They got to turn to God and get and forsake the sin. And forsake it means you have no more desire from it. You turn from it. And I believe that from what's happened in my life, I believe God will take all the desire for that sin away from you. The temptation will be there to go back again. But you'll be able to resist that because you have the power of the Holy Spirit. Yes, ma'am.
He had to be filled with sorrow for all the things that he went through, being in prison for all that time and being treated badly. Yep. And so the fact that they, were willing to admit or said that they knew what they had done,
yep.
I'm sure it was moved him to the point of tears. If he
No
just
doubt.
couldn't,
But they still thought he was dead.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so let me ask you this. Anybody here ever been wronged real heavily, and the person that wronged you years later came back and apologized, and they were repentant of their sin, and it just broke you out into tears because you got to see the true repentance in there, and you had that peace from God about that? It's a rare thing, but it does happen. And Joseph was experiencing all that. And notice that he returned to them again and communed with them. In other words, he talked with them. Maybe had a drink or something with them, and he took from them Simeon and bound him before their eyes. So he tied up the one son, or the one brother that he said he would do and let the other ones go. Number 9 in your worksheet. The brothers are remembering what they did to Joseph. Man, I did a lot of missing letters here. The brothers are remembering what they did to Joseph and believe they are paying for that sin now. Their brother blank was bound before them. Simeon. All right. Verse 25. Then Joseph commanded to fill their sacks with corn and to restore every man's money into his sack and to give them provisions for the way, and thus did he unto them. So what did Joseph do? He gave them the corn, plus gave them all their money back. They got free corn, right? Verse 26. And they laded their asses with the corn and departed thence. So they filled their donkeys, laid them all up, put all their bags on there, and they departed. And as one of them opened his sack to give his ass provender in the end, so I'm assuming feeding, right? He despised his money, for behold, it was in his sack's mouth. So in other words, one of them opened up to take care of the donkeys there, and opens up, sees all the money back in there. It's like, oh, you know, I mean, because it's not supposed to happen, right? You give the. When was the last time you bought something from the government? They gave you your money back when you bought it, right?
Yeah.
Never happened, right? Matter of fact, they always want more from you, so they come after you again. So we see that taking place here. In the mouth, and verse 28, and he said unto his brother, my money is restored, and lo, it is even in my sack. And their heart failed them, and they were afraid, saying one to another, what is this that God hath done unto us? Now, I don't think they're saying this in the area of blaming them. I think they're saying this in the area of what are we reaping from what we've sown. You know, God's allowing us to reap. Oh man, now we're going to be accused of stealing all the money, stealing the gold. We're all going to be killed. You know, what do we get ourselves into? What is this that God has done unto us? So they're not saying, God, what have you done to us? You know, that's not, I don't think what they're saying. I believe they're saying, you know, they're realizing the consequences of their situation. Number 10, verse 25 to 28, why were the boys' hearts failing them? I just kind of talked about that. Verse 29. And they came to Jacob their father under the land of Canaan, and told him all that befell unto them, saying, the man who is Lord of the land spake roughly to us, and took us for spies of the country. And we said unto him, we are true men, we are no spies. We be 12 brethren, sons of our father, one is not, and the youngest is this day with our father in the land of Canaan. And the man, the Lord of the country, said unto us, hereby shall I know that ye are true men. Leave one of your brethren here with me, and take food for the famine of your household, and be gone. And bring your youngest brother unto me. Then shall I know that ye are no spies, but that ye are true men. So will I deliver you your brother, and ye shall live. So the boys are telling their dad what all happened. They're telling Jacob what's happening here, right? Number 11 in your worksheet. 29 to 34, the brothers were explaining to Jacob what had happened. Who is the one brother that was not in verse 12, 13, which we know, we already talked about that. One brother would know was was Joseph, who was not. Verse 35 to 38, we'll finish up this chapter. And it came to pass, as they emptied their sacks, that behold, every man's bundle of money was in his sack. Remember, it was just the one they found out was in the inn. So they were already nervous about the one. Can you imagine now when they opened up 8 more sacks? Because only 9 went back. So they opened up 8 more sacks, and all the money's in there, right? And when both they and their father saw the bundles of money, they were afraid. Jacob was afraid also. And Jacob their father said unto them, me have ye bereaved of my children. Joseph is not, and Simeon is not, and ye will take Benjamin away. All these things are against me. Jacob saying, look, I've lost Joseph. I'm now losing Simeon. Now you want to take Benjamin, the youngest one, away? Yes, ma'am.
It's interesting that, you know, even Isaac and Jacob, they always are about me.
Yeah.
Look what's happened to me. Look
Yeah.
what you've done to me.
Must be in the family bloodline, right? But you're right. We saw Abraham. I told his wife, "Hey, protect my sisters. They don't hurt me. You know, it's okay what they do to you, but they don't want to hurt me."
And
You know, praise the Lord.
yeah, Isaac. And
Yep. You know, some of society hasn't changed much today. You know, I think it was Loretta was telling us the other day that there were 1.7 million men, something like that, that are out of work now, aren't working. Was I right in my numbers? 7 million men right now. They're not working, not because they can't, because they choose not to. You know, and so it means the women are having to go to the workforce to do all that stuff now. It's a mess. So I told my wife I was going to become a statistic and she can work. She hit me in the head, and the next day I realized I was wrong. So we're good, praise the Lord.
I'm in that.
Huh?
She thinks I'm in that number. I said I'm retired.
Here you go. All right. So Jacob's in verse 36, Jacob's like, man, all this against me. Verse 37. And Reuben spake unto his father, saying, slay my 2 sons, if I bring him not to thee. Deliver him into my hand, I will bring him again to thee. So Reuben was willing to bet his 2 sons' lives that he would make sure Benjamin was protected. That Benjamin would come back to him. Yes, sir. Oh, I thought you had your hand up. Sorry,
Yeah,
Coach Cal.
I was
Sorry,
counting.
I thought you had your hand up there. So now, for Ruben's sake, I mean, I don't know about you, but I'm not so sure I bet my kids' lives on that. You know, take the life of my two kids if I don't bring my brother back. You know, it's like I don't know.
Either that or starve to death.
Huh?
It was either that or starve to death.
Yeah, that's true. Verse 38. And he said, my son shall not go down with you, for his brother is dead, and he is left alone. If mischief befall him by the way in which ye go, then shall ye bring down my gray hairs with sorrow to the grave. Joseph is basically saying, listen, or Jacob is basically saying, look, I'm going to die if my sons die, right? You're going to bring me down. Now, Jacob thinks that this pathway is real scary. The reason why it's scary is because of his sons, right? They're the ones that they got rid of Joseph. They're the ones that are the reason why Simeon's left back in Egypt. So the way is not as bad as what Jacob thinks. It's just how we've been led to believe. Yes.
Did Jacob know though that his sons had given Joseph away? They didn't know.
Not at that point. No,
No.
Jacob at this point still thinks that Joseph is dead.
Right.
It's in the next couple of chapters that we find out that he wasn't. So there's a lot went on in that chapter. I'm telling you, man. What I like about the book of Genesis is that it's never a dull book. It's a continual book, and it's just always something going on. So next week we pick up with them taking Benjamin back, and we'll see what happens at that point, and see if they rescue Simeon. That was probably one of the fastest hours I think I've been through in a long time. I'm pretty close to it. Yes, sir.
Jacob was reaping all the deception he had sown early in his life.
Yeah.
And so he's just finding out just how bad deception is.
Well, the sins of the father are carried on to the third and fourth generations, right?
Right.
See, I keep saying this, and people got to start understanding it. Our sins don't just affect us; they affect so many other people around us, and that's something we so often forget about. Prayer request. I did talk to Liz a little bit today. You want to give us an update? She said she's feeling a little bit better. Yeah, no, maybe.
I don't know, she went to the doctor's today, so they just doubled her medicine. to see if it's
Okay.
gonna make a difference.
So keep Liz in prayer with her back. The Woodburns in prayer being out of town, being with her daughter. I don't think she's had the baby yet. I haven't heard.